Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Allow me first to introduce myself. I am Dr. Safa Gharbia. I am an expert in pharmaceutical product development and regulatory affairs across the MENA region with more than 30 years of experience. It gives me great pleasure to be moderating this webinar session today on the role of AI in regulatory affairs. Our esteemed speaker will be Mr. Nusaibah aljaloudi. Let me give you a brief bio on Nusaibah. He is the founder and Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer of PI, Pharma Intelligence, a reliable company that provides pre-marketing insights into drug research development, regulatory approvals, patents, manufacturing, and market access pharmaceutical companies. With over 10 years of experience, Nusaibah is recognized as an approachable leader and a results-driven professional. In addition to being an entrepreneur, Nusaibah leads a portfolio of interdisciplinary projects, mainly in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. His field experience and approach to battling misinformation have led him to his excellent visibility in the sector. As the founder of PI, Pharma Intelligence, Nusaibah leads a professional team where he coordinates collaborative projects, mentors and supports, mentors and supports new recruits and businesses, and delivers performance reviews. Nusaibah graduated with a degree in industrial engineering from the University of Jordan and holds a master's degree in international production management from Hamburg University of Technology. He is also certified in PMP, a professional in business analysis, PMI, PBA. Join me, please, in welcoming Nusaibah. Nusaibah, you can start the presentation. The floor is all yours. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Safa. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here in this webinar as well. So let me start. The role of AI in the regulatory affairs. The first question that I would like just to start my session, does it matter? Does it mean a lot? To understand this, we need to understand the paradigm and the technology, what's happening there. When it comes to artificial intelligence, today we can see that the generative AI as one of the tools in the artificial intelligence is progressing well, adjusting, and there is recalibration with the expectation when it comes to the industry and the professional and also to the visionary in the market. We can see also there is two things that start to have a hype, increasing hype in the industry, in the domain of the artificial intelligence, using Gartner hype, which is usually it's a very important tool where the industry leaders they monitor the trends when it comes to the technologies. It measures either the time when these technologies they make the breakthrough and how is the expectation versus the is doing in the market. So what is today again? It's a new as well that we will start to hear more aggressively in the next few months is the agentic AI as well as the AI ready data. So every now and then this kind of technologies we will see more investment due to this hype, and we will start to see the implications in the industry. So today I would like to focus only maybe a bit on the generative AI since it's progressing. It's very close to the plateau of production. So within the next 2 to 5 years, we will see it in everyday application where it's going to be acceptable and a kind of the skills that we need to acquire. And also we will see it in terms of the services as well as the application. So what's the generative AI? Generative AI is an artificial intelligence tool that actually has the capabilities to generate content or text or image or videos. I bet most of the attendees here today, they try to play with it either by the public domain one, like the GPT, Gemini, or Anthropic or DeepSeek. So it's usually start by analyzing a large data asset where this model start to understand the semantic and the sequence of the word. So it start or the image. So it start to generate by using something what we call transformers. And this relation between the text and the large data set, it gives the model capabilities to generate further and be creative sometimes when it comes to content or image or text creation. Why it's important to the pharma? The pharma, it's actually it's very important because it's speed up the drug discovery. It's one of the powerful tool that it can be used to predict the sequence. If we look at the capabilities of the model, so that we see its impact on the acceleration of the drug discovery. Also, it's very a powerful tool for the search engine capabilities. So today, it's very nice to use this kind of tools, not only by acquiring knowledge or making them to make for you a task, but rather just to ask them for doing some research, trying to get information. And this is very important in the domain of the pharmaceutical, since the literature review and the literature research is very important. It also can help create personalized medicine, since it taps and uncapture the untapped capture the untapped potential of many needs that is hidden within this large data set in the online. So we can discover the unmet need by the patient, and it can help us to target this need by the medicines. Therefore, also it can speed up the task by the professionals, which is also reduce the R&D cost. So, how is it doing when in terms of the hype? As we said, it's improving and recalibrating with the hype. So the hype, which is used to be marketing for the generative AI, that can do everything for you, which is unfortunately today with every professional, and when it comes to the specific domains questions and your domain of expertise, it shows sometimes a pitfall, and it cannot perform as we wish. So actually, it is more about enhancing the capabilities. As we mentioned, it can be used as a search engine tool. It can be used as a creative, fixing some or generating some ideas, but it cannot really perform the job on behalf of the subject matter expert. The other one, it can be plugged to the existing data set. Not really correctly. That's why we see a new hype and a new technology coming, which is an AI data ready. So what we found out today in the industry, in the application, in everyday task, that the AI cannot perform well with every kind of data. We see an emerging concept when it comes to the data, like fair data, which is like today is acceptable and adopted by the pharmaceutical sector, whereas the data need to be foundable, accessible, interoperable, and reliable, so that it can be used for the AI. And this is the main part that we would like to address. It also can affect every part of the organization, and sometimes it raises some concerns and worries when it comes to the jobs. That's not true, because application of the AI, it needs to be very specific in understanding what you need to be do. So usually organization will prioritize, and today this is what we will tap in this session, how to think about the AI and which kind of the task that you can use, and identify where AI can help you and prioritize it to your management. So we see it's going to be a transformative. It will take a lot of time, but AI cannot replace the human sense and the subject matter expert. It rather can be a helpful tool and accelerate the jobs that's required. So how is the projection? According to McKinsey and Company, the generative AI is expected to generate between 60 to 110 billion dollar in value. It's distributed across different aspects of the industry, from the commercial as the biggest, then and especially like the engagement with the physicians and the caregivers. Later, we see the second significant, which is we talk about the drug discovery and the research, especially in the R&D domain, and also including the regulatory affair and the clinical development as well, and the drug repurposing, and also like developing the personalized medicine. As a whole, as well, there is a massive benefit that the enterprise can itself, like the whole company can benefit from workflow, like let's say developing a workflow system and engagement with the employees in a good way. So generative AI is happening. We can see the potential. According just now, maybe 2 hours ago, according to McKinsey, 90% of the companies, they start to apply AI. However, it's still very new. So only 1% of the companies which start to apply AI, generative AI, start to make benefit out of it. So everybody now is playing, trying to find the benefit of the generative AI, trying to find the right application. And this is what we would like to address today in the regulatory affair: how to scout and search for the potential, and to really and to help you to identify the use case where you can start with generative AI and the AI application generally. Why it's matter today? Because what we see, there is a complexity happening and decreasing every day. An everyday topic when it comes to regulatory affair, and every sessions that we are attending, we're hearing from the subject matter expert, the complexity is keeping increase. This is due to first, what we call it today, the pharmaceutical sector is a global player, which means it's interact with a diverse environment, and this that required the globalized submissions of the say. Dealing with the global is not an easy task. There's a lot of different standard, a lot of different format, a lot of different guideline. So how to incorporate with this, how to maintain the knowledge and to map this data, especially when it comes to the sale, because for instance, if you apply this change in the US file, how you need to really map this change, or at least to be alerted to the other file, let's say in the other region and another format, or to make sure the translation is really coherent, and the implementation is according also to the guideline, because it's not necessarily this kind of change is requested by different region. It's also divergent requirement. We see a kind of some of the region and some of authorities, they are really advanced when it comes to their requirement. However, with other regions and the regulatory bodies, they still lag. And here's the complexity. It's also today becomes more complex because in adapting the digital transformation, we see some of the authorities, they request a specific data format, while the others still they need the paperwork. So this also increased the problem. And these problems, it hits hard when it comes to the update and also to cross map this kind of data today. So when it comes to regulatory affair, it's not an easy, it's very challenging. That's why we need to look how the technology can help us to address this kind of challenges. The other thing is that the impact of this diversity, it starts to be appeared in the data itself. So the data today that's generated by regulatory affairs, it becomes more increasing in terms of volume. And this raises a lot of questions: where to store this data, how to make it accessible, as we mentioned, how to make it fundable and interoperable across the organization. And this is a very challenge today, and when it comes to every organization, is to make this data coherent and to really to have the ability to increase the volume of the data and more and more. Yet, this is another problem. We are dealing with a fragmented system. So we are dealing with ERP system, we are dealing with regulatory system, we are dealing with internal system, also with our tools and our softwares like the Microsoft Excel. And this has increased the complexity because the data format, it becomes impacted, and it becomes more fragmented. It's not an easy to link and map this kind of data. And also now today is not an easy because there is data mandate when it comes to the authority. So we can see from European Union, for instance, there is a specific type of the data and coding you need to address when it comes to the patient leaflet, and also now in the Middle East when it comes to the electronic patient leaflet. This increases the complexity again. So there is a need when it comes today to really look which kind of the standards available. We see the European Union is one of the leading by applying the identification of the drug of the medicinal product standard, where they start to make kind of a standard and index for the substance information, dosage form, unit of presentation, and so on. But again, this is limited to the European. It's not coherent with every kind of the across the global, and this also it keeps within the same challenge. This is where we see the AI can start to help. Because if we look at the submission and the interaction with the authority, then we are dealing with the manual, for instance. And one of the challenge, accordingly, we are dealing with the manual, repetitive process. This is the mandate of the fragmented data as a result of the lifecycle management and the volume of data. And the publishing risk is how to maintain this data up to date, and the reporting is aligned with every kind of the stakeholder that we are dealing with. So what we can use the generative AI as a start tool, we can use it for transcripting and generating, how to use it to check the data and the quality of the data when it comes to the CTD, and to really eliminate the copy-paste portions, let's say. It can be helpful to update and validate. So today you can just, for instance, develop an AI agent using the generative AI that can go through your data and validate and comes back to you with just like a note what you need to address and to fix in your data. So this is just a simple use case. What we later we will address is more complex and really advanced application of the AI. And when it comes also now, the product information challenge, it becomes more I would say severe, because we start to interact with the patient. So how to address the global labeling and the consistency across the market. We don't want delay. We don't want a misleading information. We want the data to reach to every kind of patient. And that's also what we mentioned is about the structure of the requirement, how to make sure this data format is mapped correctly. So whenever there is a change in one element, it will impact the others. Otherwise, unfortunately, it will impact the safety and monitoring and the pharmacovigilance, because this kinds of the high case volume, it will really hinder us to really miss one of the adverse events, or delay in the reporting, I would call it as well. And there's a lot of parties involved, especially with the pharmacovigilance, dealing with the authority as all later also to transfer this data toward health organization and so on. If the data is not coherent, unfortunately, the patient will be impacted, and we will see an adverse effect. It might also reach to the death. And this is what we want to avoid. So we don't want this kind of the requirement and the paradigm to end up impacting the patient, rather than to accelerate and also to help them to increase the safety when it comes to the drug. So I'm gonna present some case studies when it comes to the application. So handling, for instance, a complex and manually and intensive and repetitive work, and also like how to make it across multi-country. You can also like start to think about using a kind of hybrid technology between the cloud system and link this data with AI, generative AI, where it can help you to make a consistency check or and a cross-reference. We can see there is two emerging applications. One is coming from Vive, and the other from Viva, when it comes to regulatory affair, where they help you to really share like a cloud system where you can put your information and the dossier information in their cloud, and the AI agent can check any kind of inconsistency and what kind of the information that you need to check. There is also, when it comes to pharmacovigilance, there is two organization that is leading, where they actually using very advanced an AI tool, which is the neural language programming and the machine learning, to really understand and check the terms and try to map this information so that it makes sure that data is transferred accessibility and access across the authorities in very quick and in the right format. Um, um, and when it comes also like handling the research and the data and the information about the CTD, for instance, you need to really to be careful when it comes to using of the AI tools. We understand there is everybody now have the hype toward the open AI and their tools. This is what I would like to highlight. You need to be very careful, because this is an open for public. So it holds a very public information, not specific to the domain. It can result to a problems when it comes to hallucination and to the temperature of the model. So what today we would like to really highlight how this kind of specific domain tools and application and models can really help the regulatory affairs professionals to really get the maximum value of the AI and specifically to the generative AI. So if we go and ask, for instance, what are the electromagnetic accessibility requirement in the either US FDA or the EMA, you will find the OpenAI, the GPT, with the premium user, it will generate it like this. So it's like an extraction and very powerful tool when it comes to extraction of data. However, this is not the kind of the data that we would like for the submission and for the documentation purpose that we need. If we also look at another public AI tool, which is Gemini, you can see also generate the same context of the data and highlighting the problem. However, when it comes to the specific domain, we want the requirement to be in the table format, in the specific range, and also validated. So actually what we use one of the foundation model, which is also developed by Meta, but we build an agent to really do all the validation and the cross check and training it so that it can get back to the professional with the right format and the right checks without need really to further work. And this is where the beauty of you, if you start to really set your use case where the companies they can start to help you, this technology companies or your team, and by developing your own skills and capabilities to really start to address this kind of the potential to your daily task, rather than having the challenge that you need to challenge the GPT or the Gemini. So how we can start? First, as we mentioned, this is what we just saw, an example of the use cases, and I can just like summarize them by the repetitive and duplicated task. Sorry, there is a copy-paste portions of the work when it comes to the regulatory affair. There is another use case where we use it is the fragmented data, handling volume of the data and the validation of it, and as well as come to the consistency of the data and the submission across different and the multi-country. So how to start to use it? You need to pick one of this use case, one of this challenge, and you need to start to work on your data in your organization. The first thing what you need to do is to start to think about the data. What kind of data format that you want as an output, and what kind of input that you have already in the organization. And what when it comes to the also to the accessibility of this data, because sometimes, as we mentioned, there is a fragmented data across the organization. So for instance, if you are regulatory team and the MENA, they hold their own data, while the European team is holding their own data. You need to make this data accessible so that you can really make it consistent to the organization. And then you need to think about the mining of it and the process of keeping mining and keeping updating your own data. And maybe sometimes further, you need to call it a process mining. So understanding from the process and the further submission and the correction, how you can utilize this data to really help your models and help your task to really validate the data further. We see today there is a use and there is a use cases and there's companies and there is now an endeavor of having the Gen AI. As I mentioned, the recent post by McKinsey today is that 90% of the company they start to apply generative AI. So that now we see the regulatory moving bodies. As we can see, for instance, the European Medicine Agency, they publish a paper when it comes to the use of AI. And this is an non-binding still, which is it makes sense because companies still trying with the use of the generative AI and still not strict. However, it focuses on applying principles of how you need further to apply the AI. So it should be risk-based approach and human-centric. This is the most important. So you need the human in the man, sorry, middle in the man in the middle. So you cannot really rely fully on the AI. The AI can help you to cater the data, building a draft of the submission, etc. But still, the responsibility and the final check it should be supported by the human rather than anything. It also starts to address the traceability and explainability, and this is important. Why the AI data ready becomes very important. So today, when it comes to the generative AI, it will start to generate text. If I don't know what kind of resources and the data that is being used by either within your organization or the public, I cannot trace it back. So your report will miss some of the resources and also will miss kind of explaining from where they got this data and the generated text. So today it becomes mandated for the new kind of application, either now with the update in the OpenAI that you can see, or the Gemini or DeepSeek, there is a now mandate to really explain and provide the source for the user so that people can trace back from where you got this information and to avoid hallucination. It's also address the validation and performance management. So the use and the stress on the use of the validation, which is important. And I see myself that AI can do very well when it comes to the performance and the validation, rather than conducting the job itself. And also alignment with the legal and the regulatory framework, so that also now today there is a lot of acts when it comes to the data, either by the US or by the EMA. And also we start to see now there is in the Middle East, there is a move and there is adoption of such kind of the act when it comes to the data handling. So should be also going into the line. That's why companies today need to be careful when handling this data and handling also the source of the data. So unfortunately, we start to use to see some of the trends that the professionals start to go to the OpenAI and try to provide the sources or internal data. That's why today the data governance and security becomes more important. And we see most of the companies, they try to stop and block and develop policy where they block the use of the open and public let's say generative AI tools. This is because unfortunately the need for to really get the best of the generative AI tools, you need to share more data. And this is becomes a risk on the confidentiality and risk of the also legal consequences later on. So we see that the most of the pharma companies today, they either do a collaboration models with this kind of OpenAI or Google to really build the specific models and specific domains for their own users. So what it's also now, I would like really to catch up, to wrap up with this, the use case and the rules of the generative AI is really, you need to start to act accordingly. You need to equip yourself with the skills and the tools of how to do it. But first, start to draft and write the use case that you want to apply. And the second, treat the generative AI tools that are public with really careful when it comes if you are using your company data or your personal data. It would be preferably if you have this kind of specific models that is working by even the provider themselves, like GPT, where they have the enterprise models, or Google to have also enterprise model. You can check with your company if they have such kind of policy or they have specific models as subdomain for this kind of tools, which is also will help you to get the maximum of it. I would like also to address, which is I think most of the important question that I keep receive, which is the role of AI and the impact on the job, which is the last hype, and would it really impact the jobs and also like cut anything? I think today is not only about the AI. If we look today at the environment and the technology and the demography and the economic, there is a lot of factors is really impacting our jobs today, especially even when it comes to the regulatory affairs or across the pharmaceutical sector. We see the green technology, for instance, the packages. There is a new mandate happening there, so you need also to take this into consideration. The demographic shift, it's also now the Gen Z becomes seen in the workforce. And also now the generative AI and the AI tool. So the jobs, in my opinion, it's not going to be impact. This is happening across every, let's say, cycle of 10 years, but the jobs will be reshaped. The way that we do the job, it's going to change, but the job itself will be lasting. So because of this kind of the technology, what they do. So if we look backward before the Microsoft and Windows, the job was there, but the Microsoft and Windows, what they did, they changed, they reshaped the way of how we do the job. So I would like just to share with you some of the skills to really to get the maximum of and understand the generative AI is that you really to really develop the skills in terms of the AI and big data, system thinking, where you can look at the system and the job that you do and develop the use cases. Have an awareness. It's not necessarily to be an expert in this domain of the cyber security, either by your public data or your company data, your personal data, and also it's also with the regulatory affair and the requirement. I added the environmental aspect because we need to consider also today the green. Culture, it becomes increasing. This will change the packaging, the way of how we handle the packaging, and all that stuff. So this is also what we see in the next 5 years. It's also you need to be aware about the technology and the use of the technology, the expectation, because you don't need to build an extreme hype when handling the technology. The technology is still limited; it's not as it's shown in the media, and also to be creative of how use this kind of limitation and constraint to build the best out of it for your job and the future. I really thank you. I think I covered the most of the aspects, so I would like to really leave the space for the questions.
Thank you so much, Nusaibah. That was really invaluable information, and it was really an eye-opener. I really hope all the attendants also found it very beneficial. We can start with some questions. I just have a comment because new technologies are becoming more and more frequently used. They are popping up everywhere. Artificial intelligence, automation, machine learning, digital transformation, robotic, data analytics, you name it. So the question is, are these terms applicable to pharmaceutical industry and more specifically to regulatory affairs? Nusaibah already told us that yes, it is applicable to regulatory affairs. So my question to you, Nusaibah, is how would you describe the current maturity of AI, artificial intelligence adoption in pharmaceutical industry and more specifically in regulatory affairs, please?
Yeah. So the majority when it comes to the technology itself is doing as a technology, as an absolute technology is doing really great. However, when it comes to the application today is not only limited to the pharma, it's a kind of challenge across the globe. As I mentioned, according to McKinsey, it's only 1% of the company they did it. This not, I would not call its impact the maturity because actually the maturity is good. Actually, there is a gap and we need to address the gap of this. I think today what's the biggest challenge is that we need to look at this technology and to build a proper use case so that we can see the maximum of this mature technology. Because yes, if you ask me if is the technology is mature, yes. Is it will being developed? Yes. Is there a community that's working to advancing it? Yes. So I think it's coming, and to make it successful, you need to look at the use case so that the company get maximum of it.
Great. Also, Nusaibah, during your presentation, you have walked us through the main challenges faced by the regulatory people. Globalization of submissions, divergent requirements, frequent regulatory updates, also the huge volume of data, the fragmented systems applied in the pharmaceutical industry, the data mandates from the authorities, and the updates, the continuous updates. So the question is, what are the biggest pain points which the regulatory affairs teams are facing today and which can be improved by AI?
Great. I think today is the more that we are silent on these challenges, it becomes more augmented. And unfortunately, we can see it in it will reflect on the management and the leadership and the coordination between the team. So the more the data will be fragmented and the more we are handling each kind of piece of mandate and challenges and country by separate teams, this will impact the organization knowledge management at the end of the day. So the organization, it cannot really produce a knowledge, and the teams, it's gonna be later they will be disconnected. So it will impact later maybe also the career growth. So the team, for instance, the MENA is not aware about the US. They have different knowledge. They are accessing and aware about different requirements than the agent team. And this is gonna be impact also, let's say, the job itself and the role and the profession of the regulatory affair. So the more we are silent, the more it's gonna also impact us an adverse effect because it's gonna impact the regulatory affair as a teamwork, as a profession, as a career development.
Yes, yes, clear. Well, as we can see, the use of AI in pharmaceutical regulatory affairs is still in the early stages, but it has the potential to revolutionize the industry. So from your perspective, Nusaibah, why is it now the right time for RA to start integrating AI?
Yeah. Well, what's obviously as we are now being optimistic to the audience, we need to also look what if we are not moving now. Within 2 5 years, there will be a disruption. There will be a lot of technologies, a lot of, let's say, outsider, a newcomer to the industry, a new service provider that might really disrupt the job and the way that maybe not being misunderstood, being misunderstood by the boards and the corporate management, and where we see the problems later on. So the best way to move now, to look at the data rather than to be blamed later, rather than to be lag in term, and you find yourself illiterate to this kind of technology. So I think that this is the right time to really start to move so that within the 2 years you feel yourself merge with this paradigm that's happening and the shift in the industry.
Yeah, sure. And which RA workflows are already seeing the most AI adoption? Is it regulatory intelligence, submissions, approvals, labeling, pharmacovigilance? What do you think?
We see the best one that is everybody's working around and is the regulatory intelligence, including our company, a lot of companies also in the globe. There is a huge investment because an easy, less risky when it comes to the patient. Now we start to see more application and more advancement in using it in the dossier and the ECTD review and let's say kind of validation of the information. We see there is aspiration toward pharmacovigilance, and there is importance. It's highlighted by the World Health Organization. There is a huge investment globally from regulatory bodies to really set up the data. So it's not just only an individual job. It's now becomes a collective job where everybody want to work and improve the data, like the MIDRA, for instance, for the coding for pharmacovigilance. So I think the pharmacovigilance is where everybody is aspired to really impact the patient life. But still, I would give it the third in term of the priority. So I would give first is the regulatory intelligence, second is the dossier and the submission, and the third is the pharmacovigilance.
Yeah. Well, the labeling is a big issue also for regulatory people. We all know this. And during your presentation, you mentioned the product information, the challenges faced for this topic, especially because it may impact the patient's safety, of course. And we also know that the requirements for the labeling across, let's say, our region, the MENA region, is very fragmented. It's really, for a regulatory person, a dream can come true to have a unified or harmonized labeling text material. But unfortunately, until we see this day, we need to manage with fragmented labeling. So can you shed more light, please, on the probability of applying AI on the labeling text, the product information?
Yeah, when it comes to the labeling, we could see one of the application, and it's one of the most interesting application, starting by, let's say, the grammatic and the alignment of the text. But what I see also there is now move toward more application where it's triggered the update, like the clinical update and the clinical benefit, and also like start to impact them to highlight for the team what they need to upgrade in the label. However, this does not address still the fragmented requirement. When it comes to fragmented requirement, AI really can help in kind of like, let's say, a third-party engine where you can build an agent where it can take all of this fragmented requirement and start either to align and harmonize based on the requirement, like choosing the right text and so on, because this is the ultimate objective. We don't also fragmented labels, this means fragmented supply chain. So we don't want that. So you can use it first to harmonize, and the second also to map the data. So whenever there is something, let's say in an element in your submission of the patient leaflet and label in the Saudi Arabia change, it can highlight to you where do you need to take an action in Jordan, for instance, or also to update for you the data and just to highlight and prepare all the tasks so that you just need to review and submit to the authority. There where we see an AI can happen, it can help. It's very helpful for validation and also for mapping the data.
Yeah, that's great. That will increase also our time efficiency and the correctness of data, so it will minimize
Mhm.
the errors.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. What certificates in AI that will benefit regulatory in their careers?
Well, this is a good question. I think for this question, I have an answer. It's one of them is now you need to kind of say how to build your own agent. It's either one of the nice certificate I would call it from it's still an open source by the way training for it's called LangChain. So how to develop your chain of thought and make your agent do the job that the way that you do. So this is very important, but this is very technical. So you need to be a programmer a bit. What I really urge the professional to really invest more in how to develop the use case. So what kind of the skills that you need to develop today is how to develop a use case where every business analyst and the programmer can read easily and tell you, okay, I got you. So I'm gonna develop it for you. So keep the programming with the programmers. What you need today is like how to convey and to present your ideas as a use case in a way that other team and the program they can understand. So use case development is one of the important skills that you need to develop today. Also, a business analysis or translating of requirements is the most other important. If you want to go technically, LangChain is the best.
Mhm. Thank you, Nusaibah. There is another question from our audience. Thank you for the presentation. How can NLP-based AI models automate ECTD dossier preparation while ensuring compliance with ICH-M4 guidelines? Also a very interesting question.
Yeah. So in reality, there is no one agent that or AI model can do everything. You cannot. It's also part of the conflict of interest. You cannot use the neural language programming, let's say, a standalone model that do the job and it check itself. So what you need to look is like you need to build a kind of hybrid model, a multi-agent, where a model that will do the text of or let's say the submission and the text preparation, and the other model that will do the validation on that model, so that you as a user you will come back with a draft and also the a kind of note and the validation what you need to really check and before you get the data accepted and the submission moved to the authority. So here, to answer this, you need to look how to implement a multi-agent rather than one agent. So an agent to do the job and agent to control the job.
Yeah. And how about the data in this case, Nusaibah? You mentioned several times that the data should be cleansed, arranged in a certain format, probably archived. What should the industry look at, and particularly the regulatory affairs look at when they manage their huge amount of data to help them further later on in applying AI?
I think what we need to look and everybody start to adopt on digital transformation, move out of your job starting. You don't need to change anything. Just first move everything to the cloud. So that makes the data accessible later, even if the format has a problem and so on. The second element is that you need to establish a guideline for every manager. This is a call for managers. Establish a guideline. The way that you write the names of the files, the dates that is mentioned, for instance, on the name of the file, and specific version. For instance, like CTD Jordan 09 2025 25 V1. So it's like you can later on use the data to be accessible, and then later on you can really cleanse the data inside and try to map it and clustering using the artificial intelligence, which is later it's going to be accessible. But today what we see as the challenge is the data is scattered itself, like the files is scattered itself, the data in different formats. So first rule, put a guideline and make like a guideline for how to name and cluster the data and where to save them.
Yeah, so standardization of data is really a key
Yeah.
aspect here. There is also another question from our audience, from Monica. How data is protected throughout the RA submission or any stage? Because most of the API tools capture and store the inputs and results that are generated. Any special agreements?
Yeah. So today, let's say the online tool like OpenAI, Gemini, and Microsoft, they can develop a special agreement with your company. It's called the confidentiality agreement. It's like an enterprise subscription where you can access this kind of tool, but the data of the team will be for the use and the confidentiality protected first, and also the data can be later used for the application of the company. So today, if you just only use, for instance, chat.gpt.com, please be careful with yes, with highlighting. Actually, the data is protected when it comes to the public application. But as you mentioned, this is a nice question because what your data you are providing, it's really protected. However, the chain of thought and the model, how it works, it's have the self-learning. So the structure, let's say the model is going to be recalibrate with this data, so you might sound they save the data. So to avoid this, go and sign with a confidentiality agreement with this kind of company via corporate and enterprise agreement. Microsoft is doing well with the Copilot, so usually they sign nowadays with every company with a license. And the Copilot today, what's amazing is also use GPT-5 with the enterprise offer. So this is a solution. It's like you have two in one.
Great. Another question, Nusaibah, please. What are the key expectations around validation, explainability, and human oversight that companies should keep in mind?
Yeah. So when it comes to the human or the man in the middle, it's not like a protection. It's like a safe guard. As we mentioned today with the second question of Dr. Safa, you need to start to develop your skills. So the man in the middle is required, but this man or it's not like as a refer of the gender, but the human need to be able to have the technological literacy to deal with the AI. So you need to develop the skills. But yeah, there should be a man in the middle for every kind of job. When it comes to validation is important because we as a human, we do mistakes. So also generative AI is very helpful to help us to correct and find a problem on the context that we are writing and so on. So I see with the validation is very important, is applicable to do because it's just a validation, just like providing you a note, where is the pitfall of the submission or the tasks happening. When it comes to explainability, this is the problem. To have the data explained, you need a data source that is being used. And the data, it's not like what kind of data that you are sharing. And is the data accessible? Is the data standardized? Is the data in different format? Is the data ready, clean? So that the model can explain and correctly and provide the sources very correctly. So explainability actually is adding a burden in the companies because they need to work on their data more and more.
Okay. And regarding our regulators, our regulatory bodies, do you see them using AI in assessment or safety monitoring? And how does that influence industry?
We saw recently that Saudi Arabia they start to implement an AI model for the review of the safety report. So we can put it in the use case of validation, where the safety report is coming and this model is trying to check if the data all over like filled correctly placed and so on, so that it gives and help the assessor to really find where is the problem of the reporting. So we saw in Saudi Arabia there is investment happening in this direction. They also established a center for the SFDA for AI, and we see also in United Arab Emirates. But I think today what our authorities in Middle East they are busy with the data itself, the format, the labels, the way of submission. And I think today what companies also need to be very highly engaged to really highlight this fragments because we don't need the Middle East fragment because it's already small market. The more the fragment, it will impact the supply chain. But yeah, we see in terms of validation that authorities they are interested to use AI for validation and do all of the checks, like if the document is correctly, if the file is full, all the modules are in place, all the formatting is correct. So they use it in this way.
Great, great. So that is expected later on if it is applied on everything to accelerate the approval timeline and increase the precision of any inquiries that comes from authorities. We look forward to that day. We talked a lot about the data. So what role does high quality data readiness play in making AI successful in regulatory affairs? This is really a key issue.
Yeah. The data, I would say it's need the three elements. It's need a culture, to just really have the data ready, like how to get the data ready. We need a data culture, like how we store our data, how we secure our data, how we place our data, where to store this data, to really understand also the time of the data, because there is also time value when it comes to data. The old data, it might be precious for some of the use case, while the fresh data and updated data is very important for other use cases. So we need also today to look at the metadata that is a result from the data. Like today to look at the files and the data when it was produced, the issue log when it was happening in terms of date, when it was reviewed, when it was accessible. This is very important because I can also look at how's the timeline and how's the value is important. From my humble opinion, when it comes to data, I think is the most important element, and where we need to start to invest. And the best way to really start with the data, you need again to start with the use case. So today, if you want to use an AI and you want to develop a model or an agent that is doing, let's say, the validation of your dossier and check if the modules are correctly placed, then in that case, you need to make sure all of your dossier information are data accessible, are in the right format. There is a way to access them electronically, like you don't need to upload and attach. You need the system itself to go and check them. So you need to put them in respiratory of one place of data so that you make the code go around them and check them. So this is where we need to think about. So you cannot really think about the data before you think about the use case. So I really today urge every professional to think how they can utilize AI, starting by the way how you use it today. But you
So
can
the key message here, sorry, Nusaibah, so the key message here is that standardizing the data and cleansing the data is a prerequisite, and it's worth the investment of time and effort, correct?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's also, Dr. Safa, when it comes to the regulatory, we are dealing with different languages as well. So let's say the problem is more augmented. Not every model can handle different language and handle it correctly and do the right mapping. So, and this is where also it's add an, let's say, an extra job in your side rather than in the technology side. Like how to map this data, how to map the translation of the disease. This is also, it's adding an extra effort at your side rather than on the technology side, because the technology, they, as you can see, it is responsible in building this kind of model that can help, but it's not really necessarily it can do your job. When it comes to regulatory, I feel is the most hardest way, and when it comes to handling the data, it becomes more complex because we deal again with a global submission. So different languages, different cultures when handling data, different formats. It is a heavy a problem. So that data handling is the most important element. Yes.
Yeah, and then you add to this important element the fragmented systems that are usually applied in the pharmaceutical industry. So how does companies address fragmented systems when trying to adopt AI in regulatory operations, please?
Yeah, this is, Doctor, what we use usually is called a mapping of data. So it's kind of an index, like the telephone index. So you have the names and you have the numbers. So also you have this kind of requirement of the data, and it comes and you need to map them with different state. This is not only by generative AI. I think generative AI is the least powerful tool when it comes to the mapping of data and handling the fragmented. Rather than here, we need to use more of normalizing the data, and also we use also the translating of the data. Um, Unfortunately, Doctor, when it comes to the Middle East, it is very problematic because in the US it's a federated model, and the EU we see a legislative union there. So everybody there, they have a regulatory where start the translation. So today when I look at the standard vocabulary in the IMA, is not a job by the pharmaceutical company, because you see all the translation from different texts is the job of the IMA itself. It's also happening in the US when in terms of the mapping, there is an X norm where you will find all the standard information and data and map them with the, let's say, with the mistakes and so on, so that also you can use it for autocorrect. But when it comes to the Middle East, this fragmented and nobody is harmonizing and do this map, it means either we will end up, every company will do this job alone, and this is very expensive and very problematic, and not easy to do, or we will see there is, let's say, a technology coming, but it's going to be very expensive also on the companies. So, because somebody will do this job. But who will pay for it? I can see it's the companies in the Middle East. They will end up paying for this fragmented and lack of harmonization, and also entity that's responsible for data in the Middle East.
Okay, that will be challenging indeed.
Yeah.
So now the debate that is always associated when the AI topic comes. Will AI replace roles in regulatory affairs workforce, or on the contrary, augment and reshape them?
I think today it's as we answered in the last slide, it's will reshape, and I do also believe it also will augment, because there is a lot of when it comes to the AI, it can be an eye opener for new innovation and creativity. So we can see also that there is a new rules will happening. We started, for instance, we want a data scientist or computer scientist as in term of education. Today we see a data engineer. There is and also data scientist. So they are different field and different kind of job. This is what we will also see when it comes to apply the technology to the regulatory affair job, where we will see people who are responsible on validating and people who are really expert in building the prompt and kind of teaching the model what they need to do, and people also what they need to validate and check in terms of the expertise, and also people who are enriching the model and also like creating a content, creating the leaflet information and so on. So all of them, they are important. So I see there is augmented types of job where I think in the 5 years we'll see the kind of job will be changing.
Well, Nusaibah, I cannot agree more with you. I totally agree. And I believe the future lies in a collaborative relationship where the artificial intelligence will handle the data analysis and the automation, freeing up the pharmaceutical professionals for more strategic, more complex, high-value tasks and patient-centric roles. So it is a powerful tool that everybody should start implementing. There was also a question from the audience if they can have a copy of the presentation, and I believe that the organizers will be providing them, I believe, on LinkedIn. At the end, Nusaibah, I cannot thank you enough for this very insightful presentation, invaluable information that you have presented. It was really an eye-opener. And we are looking forward now to the future, to implementing new technologies and to driving our pharmaceutical industry to higher levels with more time efficiency and serving our patients in the best manner possible. Thank you again, Engineer Nusaibah aljaloudi, and thank you for all our audience.
Thank you, Dr. Safa.